Hey guys, Chewy the Brick here. So, today's video I'm doing a teardown on a Dana 60 rear end out of a 1969 Ford F250. It's a Ranger Camper Special. This is the rear end out of the truck I'm currently doing a ground up restoration on. And couldn't really find much information online or on YouTube how to tear one of these things down. So I figured this would be a good enough opportunity to share along some of this information with you guys, if you guys are doing the same thing as me. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on tearing this down. I'm going to start on what is going to be the driver's side drum here. I got the passenger side drum off right now, and I'm just going to show you guys the process how to take care of that. Alrighty, so first thing I'm going to start with is taking off the axle shafts here. So this rear end is kind of unusual compared to the 78 and newer rear ends that some of you guys are used to in early bull noses, late generation bump side Fords, or dent side Ford, excuse me. So this has hub studs in it that are holding this axle shaft in right now. So there's 8 of those, and they're 11/16. So I'm just going to go ahead and impact those off real quick. Sometimes these fasteners, these old fasteners, get stuck on here, so I'm just going to thread that guy back on there so I can get it off. And to the best of my knowledge, as far as I'm aware, this rear end has never been opened up before, at least for a quote full rebuild. So I'm doing, my plan with this rear end is I'm getting rid of these old factory drums, and I'm going to a disc brake conversion for the rear end. Alright, once you got all your stud nuts off here, behind each of these there's a set of lock washers. You're going to want to disconnect those guys. And I'm going to walk over here and grab my hammer real quick to knock this axle shaft off of here. Now, interesting design to note about this axle, this rear end, is that these have taper locks for each of these studs on this axle. So when you tap these out, just be aware. Probably what I should have done is left some of these nuts on here because they like to shoot out. So just be aware when you're going through and tapping these out, they might want to shoot out of here. Just like that. So I'm going to go ahead and put the nuts back on. Alright, so I went ahead and reinstalled the remaining 7 stud nuts back on here to knock these out. The first one I hit went shooting out here into the back lawn, so I'll have to do some checking later to find that one. So yeah, just like that. So when you hit these axle shafts, they pop off here just like this. It's a conical shaped taper lock there, and there's actually a same size taper inside the axle shaft here where it rests into the studs. So that's what holds this axle shaft. So I'm going to go ahead and start knocking the rest of these out here. There's another one. Alright, so just like that, that was a pretty good hit actually, so it looks like it knocked a lot of those loose. I'll go ahead and turn this drum though real quick. Kind of give us a light tap. Just like that. Alright, so you can see, got a little bit of a leak. It's okay, I got some cardboard down here on the ground, so I'm not too worried about it. Go ahead, remove these nuts off the studs. I'm going to go through, take out the ones that will come off pretty easily. So, trick I learned for these, let me go ahead and grab my flathead screwdriver for that real quick. So the trick I learned is that on these taper locks in here, there's a split in them right there. And that split is just large enough for you to take a 3/16 screwdriver, just like so. So you find where the split is on your stud, give it a wiggle, and your taper lock comes right out. So this one's kind of at an angle here, a little awkward. Just like that, you guys can see that that's moving freely right there. Kind of get a bite on it, wiggle it off, another one off. Last one's down here. Go ahead and give that guy a few short wiggles. Last one's off. Now, the fun part. Now that you have that loose, your axle shaft there, it's ready to come out. Same thing, you will have gear oil drip out, as you guys can see. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this out now. Alright, and just like that, axle shaft's out, so I'm going to set that right there on the ground. And I'm going to go ahead and go get set up to take out the hub lock nuts. Alright, so now that we have the axle shaft out, the next step to get the hub and the drum off is to remove the hub nuts in here. So inside of these, kind of a bad angle to get at it to show you guys, but inside the hub here, there's a little lock ring in here behind these 2 3/8 nuts. And these lock rings, all you have to do to undo them is they're basically a crimp over style. So you take a flathead screwdriver, and a hammer, kind of find where they rolled it over on the nut, and just kind of tap it back out of the way. That way you can spin the nut freely. And it looks like that is the only one holding it. So, now that we have that off, as I mentioned, this is a 2 3/8. Oop, if you guys can see that. There you go. That's a 2 3/8 axle nut socket. And that guy goes right on there. And actually, that side is already loose. That is very concerning. Probably a good thing I'm rebuilding this rear end anyways for the restoration, so not a big deal for me. If you want to go ahead and take this axle nut out, once you got that guy out, there's really no order for these. They're both the same. I tore the other side apart already just to confirm that fact, but I believe these two nuts are the same. So, put that on the ground. Next thing you want to do is get that lock out of here. Now, I like to use picks, a little bit easier to get in there, because it is on a spline over these threads. So, with that locking tab off, you can see there's kind of a tongue coming off of there, and that tongue kind of rides on a groove in the axle shaft that keeps it from turning side to side. And you take these ears on here and fold them over the nut to hold it in place. So with that out of the way, I'm guessing this one's probably hand tight, so I'm just going to take the socket here, go in. Ooh, that one's tight, thank God. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and grab a ratchet here, put that guy on there, and just like that, it's loose. Now I can come back in by hand, turn this guy off. Alright, now with that almost off, now you'll notice that this hub a little bit more wiggly than it was supposed to be. That's because once you take this nut off, you're ready to take the hub and the drum off here. So, now, with that nut out of the way, add that to my pile of parts. Sorry about that, guys. The Camry battery died on me. So as I was saying, I was in the process of taking this hub and drum off here. So I kind of like tilt the drum back with the hub, reach in with the pick, grab a hold of that wheel bearing there a little bit. I'll go ahead and take that guy off the axle shaft, lay it down with my pile of parts, and now you can see that this is pretty much ready to fall off, which it is. It is ready to come off at this point. So I'm going to go ahead, grab a hold of this, and do note this is pretty heavy. Give it a few wiggles, because it may be stuck somewhat on the drums. which that does seem to be the case, and it seems like they are expanded out just ever so slightly. There we go. And just like that. And just like that, it all comes off in one assembly. And now, what you're left with on the actual axle itself is your drum brakes and your backing plate here for your drum brakes. So, since I'm needing these hub assemblies anyways for disc conversion, I'm going to show you guys how to knock the brake studs out of here. Alright guys, so the next step that I'm going to do, since I'm doing a disc conversion, is I'm going to knock out all these lug nut studs. Now you can notice that there's a little bit of moisture in here, and I did do some checking. I read the original shop manual, and these drums are only about 25 or 30 thousandths oversized from what their original casting size is. So it's pretty well safe to assume that these are probably the original drums and that have never been taken off of these hubs. So I sprayed them with a little bit of a PB blaster in anticipation of this event. And I'm just going to use a little 3-pound mallet here and just hit these guys out. Now, need be, I do have a torch available just to get this area warm if they're stubborn. I really hope the rest of them go like that. So far, so good. Turn this towards me. Fantastic. That could not have been a better example of that. So, in your guys' case, if you were disassembling these hubs to take your drums into a machine shop to get them turned over if they're worn out, or if you're doing what I'm doing, which is a disc brake conversion, a little bit of penetrating fluid around these studs, let them sit overnight. That's what I did. Turned out good. So, go ahead and grab the hub assembly here. Ooh, I may have spoken too soon. Let's see. May need to turn this up here a little bit. Oh, so you can see, probably not from your guys' perspective, but right here, there's a seam. This is the actual hub flange. This is obviously the drum. So I'm going to go ahead and go right here. Just do some nice gentle taps. Don't want to damage the hub at all. And just like that, your drum and your hub are now disconnected from one another. And since I am doing a disc conversion kit, I am going to save these lug nut studs to use. So, next part is getting the backing plate with all the drum hardware off the axle. So the next step on the teardown that I'm doing, since I'm doing a disc brake conversion, so I'm taking these old drum backing plates off. Now, the kind of a unique design it seems like on these ones they're kind of a almost a proprietary bolt, and they use kind of this oval-shaped flathead stud, and unfortunately with these back bolts being so corroded, I sprayed the cheeses out of these things with some PB blaster, hoping to ease my suffering of these a little bit, but I'm not going to hold my breath a whole lot. So we're just going to see what happens here and hope for the best. And this is a 3/4 inch socket. Alright, so that's the issue I hit the first time. Ooh, interesting. Maybe not. Hold on. So it seems like this side is actually holding. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to unbolt this side. So give me 1 second here. Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, here we are. So here's the problem I hit the first time. So you can see that that stud is now kind of freely moving in there. So I've got a pair of channel locks here. I'm going to grab that oval on the other side here and the brakes and lock onto it. sort of a solid biting surface there. And once I'm locked onto that, I should be able to finish impacting that nut off. Let me go ahead and do that real quick. Alright. I want it a little bit tighter. Alright, so that's on there nice and tight. You can see we're kind of at the tail end of that bolt almost. So I'm going to go ahead and bite onto this guy with the impact. And off we go. Alright, so we got very lucky with that one. That one came out pretty easily. I'm not going to hold my breath for the others at this point. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and grab the little mini mallet. Tap that stud out. So you can see I'm talking about with that oval shaped stud. So let's go ahead and give that a try on the other side. And even with soaking these for a couple days with some PB Blaster, they are still very, very rusty, very, very tight, very, very corroded. So I'm not going to hold my breath, but I'm going to go ahead and try and do this next one live, see if I can replicate the same results, and if not, I will bring you guys back once I got this backing plate off. Okay, go ahead and check that. So that one has almost come off on its own accord. So it seems like maybe soaking it on some of them has helped, but maybe not on others. So let me go ahead and finish taking that one off. Boom! Wow, so that's actually going much easier on this side. Same thing, I'm going to go ahead and tap that out. Just like so. So something to keep in mind for this is that if you have issues getting these studs out, if I bring you guys over here to the other side, and this is on the drum side itself, and you can kind of see where those were at in there. What you may end up having to do is that this is the parking brake arm right here. This is on a 3/8 bolt on the other side of this backing plate. If you take this arm off, you can remove the shoe hardware, all the springs and shoes and everything else in here. And what you can do is get in here on these studs with a grinder or sawzall, which is what I did on the passenger side here. So that's something to keep in mind if you have to. Or worst comes to worst, you can cut them with a torch. But let me bring you guys back onto this side and see if maybe I can replicate and go 3 for 3 on this top stud. So let's see. Wow, this is going very smoothly. Alright, so now that we got the third stud out, again, I'm going to come in with the hammer, tap that stud out. Then, what I'm going to do, you guys can't see it obviously on camera, but there's one more stud back behind that axle shaft there. I'm going to go ahead and reach over, take that guy out as well at the same time. And just like that, fourth stud is out. Go in here with the hammer. Just like that. Stud's knocked out. Now, what I'm going to do, bring you guys this way. You see all this hardware? And you can see where everything's attached on here right now. So, this is the retainer bracket for those oval studs. So you can see that there's a cutout in here. Kind of a similar size to it for those to rest up against for you to tighten and loosen them. Also, these are sheet metal and they bend very easily, so don't trust those, especially in rusty areas. These will be just toast, I'm sure. So now that that's off, knock the backing plate off, and now all of my drum hardware from my rear end comes off at once, which leaves me with these 4 studs for my caliper bracket to bolt onto for my disc conversion. So next step from here is I'm going to go ahead and split open the differential, because I'm getting the rear end re-geared from factory 410s to 354s. truck's going to be more of a highway rig, more as opposed to a towing rig. So I figured, why not re-gear it for a highway gear and kind of help out with not having a big block screaming going down the highway. So I'll get set up for that and bring you guys back. So now with both axle shafts removed, both sets of drum brakes removed from the rear end, I'm going to go ahead and take this differential cover off and get the ring gear out, the planetary body, and then also remove the pinion at the same time. Info tag, I'm not going to save this, it's just a tag on the rear end letting you know to use a limited slip additive in your gear oil. And these are all 9/16 by the way. So their diff cover removed. We can see all we have left in here is this ring gear, the planetary body, and underneath is the pinion gear. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the socket, which I believe is either a 13/16 or 7/8. So let me go grab that real quick. So this is a 13/16, which I believe is just a touch too big. It may even be a 3/4. So let me go ahead and grab that. Alright, so it is indeed a 3/4. So with your 3/4 impact ratchet, whatever you guys want to use, you want to go in I mean, you don't have to go in star pattern, but I'm going to, so I'm going to start on one corner, work over, work up, work back over. Okay, one bolt loose, 2 bolts loose, 3 bolts loose, 4 bolts loose. So with all those loose now, make sure you keep track of which one of these caps goes where, their orientation in the rear end. I have a set of stamps I'm going to be stamping this with a number 1 and a number 2, so I'm not too worried about that portion of this, but I will set those down there in order so that way I can stamp those here in a little bit. So with those out of the way, now what should happen, may not be able to do it with the axle facing up towards me, but I am going to remove the ring gear in here off of the pinion. And as you can see, those are just caps. So there's 2 bearing races, 2 inner bearings inside here on the planetary body, and then spider gears inside here for the limited slip on this rear end. So I'm going to go grab a pry bar real quick and try and get this guy out of here. Alrighty, so what I did was I went in off camera a little bit. I re-stamped the race caps on either side here on the axle sealing, on the diff cover sealing surface, just so I would know which cap goes where and what order. So what I ended up doing is taking just a small pry bar here and getting up underneath these race caps and just ever so slightly and gingerly bumping the diff up bit by bit. Now it should be just about ready to pull out at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and give that a shot, and if that one don't work, I'll just get the pry bars back in on it. There we go. Alright, very heavy. Oh, very heavy. Down on the ground with you. So since I'm replacing my races and my bearings, I'm not overly worried about keeping these in order, but keep in mind the orientation of these races to their surfaces and to their bearings. So now with the ring gear and its body out, the last step I have for my teardown is getting the pinion gear here at the very bottom out. So I'm going to work on flipping this axle over. Okay, start getting this guy out. So I will bring you guys back when I'm ready to take that guy out now. Okay, so the last thing I'm doing on this teardown is I'm going to drop this pinion gear out of the back of the differential housing. So I'm going to hit it with a little bit PB blaster. Let that soak in for a second. Alright, that's good enough. I'm sure I should do it. So go ahead and get yourself a pipe wrench. You want to bite onto that yoke. And I'm not sure I'm biting on the right side because I'm going to be using an impact for this. And this is an 1.25 inch nut on this Dana 60. So I'm going to go ahead, bite onto there real quick, see which way it's spinning. Alright. That answers that question. I'm going to bite onto it with this pipe wrench here. We're going to hope that this comes out. No problems. No way. Actually, a lot easier than I'd originally expected. So, with our nut off of there, what's going to happen, and this is on cardboard, so it should be okay to do this with. So I'm going to grab a hammer here. I'm going to take this nut, it's a little warm, not too bad. I'm going to take that, put it back on there a couple threads, take our little mallet, okay, well that should have just came right off. Go ahead and give this a wiggle. I'm going to go ahead and give this guy a little bit more heat here. See if that pops it off. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. And also spray a little bit of PB down in on the threads and let that soak into that drive shaft yoke there. Which it immediately did, so that's a good sign. Let that kind of soak in a little bit. I'm going to heat this guy up here. I'm going to go ahead and give that a tap. There we go. And just like that, I don't know if you guys saw that, but it did drop down in there. I'm going to go ahead and take that socket off there real quick. Spin it off by hand. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it is dropping down slowly. Now I'm going to take a hammer. This is a gentle tap. And just like that, falls off. Now with our drive shaft yoke off here, all that we really have left at this point is the rear pinion seal. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that off. So let me grab a pry bar real quick. And like I said, since I'm going to be rebuilding this axle, I'm not too worried about damaging none of this in here. So I'm going to just put that right there and give that a pop. Seal comes out. Now down inside of these rear ends, I believe these are different, slightly. Obviously your rear end shim is still the same. Let's see. We'll get you guys there a little bit more centered. Beautiful. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this rear pinion bearing out, and then that's it. And if you look down inside of here, the last thing that's in here is there's a couple races. So there's a rear race which is facing out towards the drive shaft, and there's an inner race which that pinion rides on. So I'm going to go ahead, Put glove back on here. I'm going to roll the rear end towards me. You can hear the pinion moving around down in there. Alright. And I'm going to zoom you guys out real quick just so you kind of see what I'm talking about here. And just like that, now we have our pinion out. Just like so. So like I said, this truck was originally geared with 410s. That's not really what I'm looking for here. So I'm going to have it re-geared out to 354s. So now with the entire yoke out of there and the rear pinion, that wraps up the 1969 Ford Dana 60 rear end disassembly. And hopefully here in the next few months I'll be getting back to you guys with putting this whole unit back together with all the re-geared parts that I got from my parts guy, and then also a rear disc conversion kit. So if you guys want to keep updated on more work on this rear end and the 69 in general, go ahead and like, follow, subscribe, and comment on the video. And if you want to see more consistently uploaded and posted truck content, you can go ahead and check out my Instagram at ChewyTheBrick.